Hi everybody, welcome back to Flossin Media. In this video we'll be doing another full Debian install with manual partitioning, and we'll be using UEFI. So as you can see under the firmware here, I have selected UEFI, whereas the last video we selected BIOS to use the master boot record. But yeah, in today's we'll be using UEFI. For the OS we're going to be installing Debian 10, specifically with the GNOME desktop. For CPUs I gave it 2. And for memory, 4 gigabytes of RAM. And as far as the OS is concerned, that's about it. So to begin the installation, I'm just going to click on this button up here on the top left to start the virtual machine. Let's give it a couple minutes to load or create the machine, and then it'll boot right in the installer. Okay, here we go. I'll just make it full screen so you can see it a bit better. And then I'm going to scroll down to the Debian graphical installer and hit enter. And then enter to go with English. Enter game for United States, American English keyboard. Check the network. Because maybe we're at the point, if you're using Wi-Fi, it may be prompting here for a password. And for my host name, I think I'm just going to call this Debian UEFI. Enter. I'll skip the domain name. Same with the root password, skip that. And then throw in your username. I'm going to say Flossin Media, Flossin for username. And then throw in your password. And then pick your time zone. And here we go with the partitioner. So say I'm going to select manual. And then select your volume. And I'm going to create a new partition table so we can start off nice and clean. And then select the free space. And I'm going to hit enter to create a new partition. And the first one's going to be 1 gigabyte, which will be our EFI partition. So I'll put 1.0 there and hit enter. And enter again for the beginning. And the name, I'm not going to worry about so much. The label, I definitely want to fill out. But yeah, not too worried about name. And for the filing system, I'm going to hit enter on that. And I'm going to go with EFI system partition. And then hit enter. Google flag will be on. And then it's going to select on setting up the partition. So yeah, now we have that 1 gigabyte partition that's UEFI. And next I'll select free space. And enter again to create a new partition. And for this will be our root, which I think I'm going to give 50 gigabytes. And you'll most likely want to give your root partition a lot more than this. Because I'm only going to be creating 4 partitions, say 1 for root, 2nd for boot, 3rd for swap, and the last one for recovery. We're not going to have a home partition. or it's actually going to be inside of your root. So your root partition is going to take up the most of your storage. And I would suggest allocating a lot more than 50 gigs. I would take, say, if you have a like 1,000 gigabyte hard drive, I would take that and subtract the swap, the boot, and whatever you're going to want for your recovery partition, and then use that for your root. So today I'll be making a 24 gigabyte swap, a 1 gigabyte boot, and a 50 gigabyte recovery, which would leave me with 925 gigabytes for the root partition. Well, because I'm only going to be using a virtual machine for today, I only gave this virtual machine 100 gigabytes. So I have to be a little bit careful here that I don't give my root too much. But as far as you're concerned, yeah, I wouldn't be shy about your root partition at all. You'll definitely be wanting to give it a lot more than 50. I think these days the general rule of thumb is to try to stay north of 100 gigabytes. Not too long ago, it used to be 10 or 20 was okay. And your system's not going to use much more than that. But after you have everything installed, you may want to add more games and applications and stuff like that. And that number can creep up pretty quick. So, yeah, definitely I'd suggest doing some math there and give your root partition as much as you can. And, yep, so I'm just going to hit enter to go with 50. And I'm going to place it at the beginning. And this will be my root partition. So, my root partition is good with ext4. The mount point's already root. And the label, I'm just going to call this root. And then the bootable flag will be off. If you remember in the previous video when we were doing MBR, the bootable flag was on for root. And it was actually off for the boot partition. But today that's going to be completely reversed. Whereas the UEFI partition, which is the boot partition, is going to have the bootable flag is on. And then the bootable flag for root will be off. And then when all that's in there, I'm just going to scroll down here and select on setting our partition and enter. And then after that, we have our swap partition. So I'm just going to hit enter on that and create a new partition. And for the swap partition, I'm going to go 24 gigabytes, which may seem a bit big, but I already explained this in a previous video, but I think I'll just do a quick recap. Old rule of thumb was to allocate the same amount of swap that you have RAM. And then that changed about a year later to make sure that you have at least 16 gigabytes in total between your swap and your RAM. And then that changed to having double swap that you have RAM. And now I just use 24 because I kind of figure that's going to be the next step or whatever. But I've been using this amount for quite a while and it just hasn't failed me. So, and that's either on, if I install this on an 8 gigabyte system or 4 gigabytes, it doesn't seem to matter. 24 just always seems to work out. So yeah, with 24 in there, I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to be at the beginning. And name I'm not too worried about. But as far as the filing system is concerned, I'm going to hit enter on that. And I'm going to select swap area. And bootable flag will be off. Delete. Yeah, and then just select done setting up partition. And then we have our swap. So, yeah, sorry, not EFI, but ESP. So we got ESP, which is our boot. And then we got our root. And then we got our swap. And then the rest I'm going to use for recovery. So I'm just going to enter on that. And enter again to create no partition. And because we're going to be using the rest of the disk, I'm just going to type in max and enter. And this can also use ext4 file system. Label is not going to be home though. So I'm going to change that. Or sorry, not label, mount point. So once I have that selected, I'm going to hit enter. And then enter manually. And then just call it recovery. Like that. And label, I'm going to give that a label of recovery. And enter. And mount options, reserve blocks, typical usage. You can just always leave those as defaults. You don't really need to worry about them. The only areas I'm concerned about here are the file systems, the mount point, the label, and the bootable flag, which will obviously be off for this partition too. This is just going to be a recovery, and then I'm going to select done setting up partition. And that's all our partitions. So I'm just going to go through them again once more quick. So this is ESP, and then enter on that. ESP, I'm not too worried about a name, but the bootable flag is on, which is what we want. So I'll select done setting up partition. And then we have our root partition, which is ext4, 50 gigabytes, no bootable flag. So ext4 mounted at root, label is root, bootable flag is off, and then done setting up partition. Swap, same thing, not much to look at there. Just swap area, boot flag off, done setting up partition. And then recovery, ext4, recovery looks good. Label recovery, bootable flag off. Yep, that looks good. And believe it or not, we're already done. So the only thing, or I guess your main concern is if you want to add more partitions later on. And if that were the case, you would make this last partition logical instead of primary. And yeah, that's pretty much it, because on UEFI you can have as many primary partitions as you like. So the only reason you would ever even create a logical is if you just wanted to add more in the future. But I don't know whether it's through research or trial and error, but I've definitely found this the best way to go, is just to have these 4 manual partitions. And everything just seems to run more efficiently, and I haven't had any problems, so it's just what I've been going with. But yeah, if you do want to add an additional partition for your home folder, yeah, you just make this last one logical, and then you can just keep on going. Or sorry, not if you wanted to add more partitions after the operating system has been installed, you'd make the last one logical. But if you want to add more partitions now before we've done that, you can make them all primary if you like. Yeah, options up to you. And seeing this little bit of free space at the beginning, at the end is normal. I'm not sure exactly what that's there for, but every time I've set up an operating system this way, or gone through this install using UEFI, I always get that 1 megabyte of free space at the beginning and 1 at the end. But as long as all these numbers look good to you, so we used almost a gigabyte for a boot. That's a root. We used 50, 24 for swap, and then our leftovers from whatever I gave it, which gave us 32.4 gigabytes for the recovery. And I'm pretty happy with that. So maybe I'll just do my one quick double check here and select the boot partition, which is EFI, bootable flag on, and setting up partition. The root, 50 gigabytes, ext4, mount point is root, label is root, bootable flag is off, looks good. And then for the swap, 24 gigabytes, swap partition, bootable flag off, looks good. And then recovery, gave it the leftover 32.4. It's also ext4, which is good. Mount point is recovery, labels recovery, bootable flag off. So done setting up partition. And I think that about does it. So I think now I'm just going to select finishing partitioning and write changes to disk. And maybe just have a quick double check here too. VDA is ESP, which that'll be our boot partition, which is going to be using UEFI. And then we have our root here at ext4. And then we got our swap, which is just swap. And then recovery is also at ext4. And in case you're wondering too, I pointed this out quite a few times in the last video. All these are VDA because I'm using a virtual machine. If you're installing this on a hard disk, you'll most likely see SDA. So yeah, I'm happy with those changes. So I'm just going to highlight yes and hit enter. Here's where it's installed in the system. So this may take a little bit of time. I'm just trying to think of anything I can tell you in the meantime to help fill some of it in. But yeah, I guess one thing I could think of is after we do get it all installed, like I did in the previous video, I'll install Timeshift to store its snapshots on the partition that we've given it. And then after we've installed everything and the system's up and running properly, I'll launch Timeshift and we'll, excuse me, we'll restore from a snapshot and just double check and make absolutely sure that Timeshift is using all the partitions that we want it to. Because one of the main reasons for creating the recovery partition was just for Timeshift. So that way it can just store all its snapshots in its own partition without having to worry about the rest of the system conflicting with them at any time. So yeah, we'll definitely go through all that and yeah, just till everybody's comfortable and everything's working just the way we want it to. But yeah, this may be a little bit longer, so I'm just going to pause the video, I think, for now, and catch back up with you in a couple minutes. One little thing I did kind of notice here too is maybe I can just show you here. My simple screen recorder is getting some errors down at the bottom here, saying some of the syncing or whatever is dropping out and too many audio samples. So hopefully the audio is okay on this video. If it isn't, I apologize. And if it's too rough, I'll just end up probably re-recording it. I may have just too much stuff going on my system right now that's bogging it down a bit. And if that's the case, I'll definitely fix it if the sound becomes an issue. But yeah, just a heads up. And hopefully it won't get to that point. Just keep my fingers crossed, I guess. But yeah, that's all I had to say. I'm just going to pause the video again now. And this should take about 5 to 10 minutes tops. Well, one thing I forgot to mention too is if you are installing UEFI on a hard disk, and remember the first partition I set up, I just had to select the EFI from the list. If you are setting this up on a hard disk and you did create a new partition table, that partition table will most likely already create an EFI partition for you. And it'll also give you the absolute minimum amount of space that you need on that partition for it to boot, which I think is something like 536.9. And that's the absolute number. If you go anything below that, the system probably won't boot. But I gave it 1 gigabyte of RAM, or sorry, 1 gigabyte of space. So that should be absolutely plenty. So even if it does auto load the first partition for you, I would just go ahead and maybe even delete that and delete any other ones that you may see if you've had an operating system already installed onto this disk previously. And then just that way you can just start off nice and fresh and just do it the exact same way I did by creating the I think it was the ESI partition, and then just give it 1 gigabyte of space and you should be good to go after that. But now that we're almost done here through the main part of the installation, just asking for a network mirror, and I'm going to just click on continue to select that, and I'm going to go with the United States and Debian.org, and I'm going to skip the proxy. But whether Debian default.org is just the default anyways, I'm not quite sure, but yeah, it's just usually the route I go through to to select those options. Hey, configuring the package manager. Shouldn't take too long. Takes any more than a minute or two. I'll pause the video. Oh, can't forget about grub. And we'll definitely need to install this too at the very end. I've done a little trial and error about this before, and I tried not installing it, and yeah, just nothing booted up. All I got was a black screen with the cursor. So either using UEFI or master boot record, I just always install grub. And it just never seems to hurt anything. What I was noticing on my simple screen recorder, my auto keeps dropping out, so I may be having to film this again anyways. But we'll see. I think it's finally time to invest in some new hardware. I've been battling it out with this beast now for over a decade anyway, so I think you only fight that battle for so long where you have to give in. And if that's the case, the next video will definitely be much snappier. But today, I just hope it makes it through. Okay, installation is complete. It's time to boot your new system. Make sure to remove the installation media so you boot into the new system rather than restarting the installation. Okay, I'm just going to click on continue. And I think I mentioned this in the last video, but this part definitely takes the longest. For this progression bar to fill up to this point, it takes about half a second, and the rest of it takes about 5 minutes or so. But as soon as it starts progressing any further it is than you see it right now, that's when you're going to want to grab your USB and get ready to pull it out. And then after that point, you'll have maybe 2 or 3 seconds. Your screen will go completely black for maybe another 2 or 3 seconds, and that's when you want to actually pull out the USB. And then after you do that, it should just boot right up into the new system. Yeah, while I'm waiting for that, I'm just going to pause the video, and I'll be back in a couple minutes. Okay, so it's started to progress again. You can get ready to yank out your USB really soon. I'm right about now. And here we go. Make this full screen. It's just got a cursor. It's always nice. Yeah, here we go. Parcel looks good. And I'm just going to pick X11 instead of GNOME because I don't feel like using Wayland. And throw in the password. And this should be using UEFI. On virtual machines, you used to always get an error or a shell prompt that would ask you to create a start UEFI file or something like that. But lately, I'm not sure whether it's because Virt Manager, which is the virtual machine manager I'm using for today, whether it's been updated and some kind of patch has been released to fix that. I'm not sure. But I was definitely expecting that error and we didn't get it. So it's really nice when that happens. So all I'm doing now is I'm just waiting for this pop-up to appear up here saying that OS updates are ready. Because if I do open up the terminal now and start updating, sometimes that'll conflict with APT, the package manager, and it'll say something like APT is already being used or something like that. So last thing I want to do is start off a fresh install with an error. So I just like to give that a couple of minutes. And maybe while I'm waiting for that, I'll just pause the video quick. And it's been about 2 or 3 minutes. I still haven't seen it yet. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to fire up the terminal here and we can start poking around with stuff. So select terminal and make it full screen. Resolutions bugged me a little bit and it didn't make any difference in the last video, but I am tempted to fix that. And actually maybe I will just really quick here. Just let me throw in a USB. I got all the script there that'll fix this up and no problem. And yeah, it definitely would be nice to have. So let's go select my virtual machine here, redirect USB device, and that would be right there. Yep, there we go. And open up the files. And then it'd be modules, bash, resfix right there. So I'm just going to open this up in terminal and run ls. And where is it here? Resfix. Yep, that looks a bit better. And maybe what I'll do too is cat resfix.sh. And I'm just going to copy this stuff into a file called xprofile in the home folder. And then each time this loads up, it should read this and then just create the new resolution inside of my settings menu. So that way I won't have to do this every time. And yeah, sorry, there's that stupid update I was looking for. But if we went to update the system while this was going on in the background, I think there definitely would have been errors. So I just always wait for that to go away before I actually start to update the system. And I think I'll just create a new tab here and say CD, get back in the home folder. If I can spell clear right. Their fingers are on the wrong keys. ls-la and no xprofile there. So I'm just going to touch it. Profile. And then nano. And then we can copy all this stuff in right here. Copy. Paste that in there. And I'm just going to hit Control O to save it. And Control X. So now if I cat xprofile. Yep, there's everything I want. So next time we boot in, everything should be just fine. So I'm going to clear that. exit, and we can CD here, clear that. And then typically the very first thing you want to do before you do anything else, actually I'll just make this full screen. And before I do that, there is one thing that's bugging me. I just want to go into settings. And maybe not settings, sorry, maybe tweaks. Like that. And I just want to go with dark mode. There we go, it looks a lot better. And get rid of that. Make this full screen. And get rid of the menu bar too. And then the very first command you want to do is sudo apt update. Actually, maybe I'll just run that anyways. Yeah, 280 packages. So next thing you're going to want to do is go sudo apt dist upgrade and run that. And that'll update all these packages for you, 280 of them. But I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be using this machine or not. So I don't think I'm going to run this command right now. But instead, I'm going to look for Timeshift, maybe install that. We can set up our snapshots. But before I do that, I'm just going to run lsblk, and we can have a look at our partitions. So we got VDA1, which is the boot, EFI this time. And then VDA2 would be our root. VDA3 is a swap, and VDA4 is recovery. So when we go to set up Timeshift, we just want to make absolute sure that it's using VDA4. So kind of have to burn that label or whatever in the back of your head and make sure we're using VDA4. And maybe I'll just run just free-h here quick to see what we're using. So VDA1 on the boot, we used only 3.4 megabytes, which is strange because on master boot record it uses between 80 and 100 megabytes. And so yeah, allocating 1 gigabyte of RAM to that partition was obviously plenty, but always nice to have more than not enough. And 1 gigabyte isn't that much these days anyway, so yeah, what the heck. And then VDA2 is our root, and we used 9.7 gigabytes, but only allocated about 50. And like I mentioned before, you're obviously going to want to give it a lot more than that, but it's just because of a virtual machine. And yeah, our swap won't be shown here. And then we have our recoveries at 45 megabytes right now. And that's just because we haven't even taken a snapshot. But after we do that, this will probably be bumped up to like 11 or 12 gigabytes or something. And which we'll use a good chunk of what we've allocated at 28 gigs or 30 gigs. Or I think it was 32 actually. Because this stuff's all converted over to binary, so it's going to be a bit smaller. And yeah, all our partitions not look good. So I think now we can install Timeshift, and we'll just make sure that it's using VDA4 for the recovery. So I'm just going to clear all this, and then go sudo apt search Timeshift. And there's Timeshift, you can see right there, and it's not installed. So I'm just going to go sudo apt install Timeshift. And yes. Okay, now we have that all installed. Go apt search Timeshift. Yeah, as we can see there, it's now installed. So we should be able to see it in our applications menu. So I'll clear this and exit. And then if I look in the applications menu here and search for Timeshift, it's right there. So I'm just going to enter on that. I'll throw my password. And I think I'm definitely going to go with rsync. ButterFS works well too, but rsync has worked flawlessly for me for as long as I can remember. So I just always stick with rsync. It doesn't seem to matter what system I'm on or whatever I'm doing. Rsync just always seems to do the job perfectly. So I'm just going to click on next. Let's scan the system. Yeah, and there we go. Like before, it wanted to select SDA1, which is post install. That's actually the USB I have in the machine right now. And I don't want that, but we want VDA4. So that'll point to our recovery partition. And that's where Timeshift will store its snapshots, which is exactly what we want. And yeah, with that selected, I'm just going to click on next. I'm going to remove the snapshots just because I don't like the computer doing this stuff in the background when I'm not completely aware. And I'll just do the snapshots on my own time. Whenever I feel like it. So I'm going to click on next. This is now set to exclude the root and the home folder, which is exactly what I want because I only want it to be concerned about the critical files that get the system up and running. If you did want to include, say, your dot files, all your configurations, you would just select include hidden here, and that would grab all your dot files. But say you wanted to grab all your movies, music, and all that stuff in your home folder too, and you wanted to back that up, you would select include all. But I would definitely suggest backing all that stuff, backing up all that stuff on your own. So then that way Timeshift only just has to worry about the most important stuff when it's running, which is really what your largest concern is when you're in that type of situation. You have to restore. You just want your system up and running correctly, and then you can just copy over all your data later. But yeah, at least that's what I usually take. But yeah, it's up to you. Either way, this program should get everything up running nice and smoothly. It's just this way it'll do it a lot faster, and yeah, you don't have to worry about any of your system files having any problems or any of that stuff. So yeah, with all that said, I'm just going to click on next. And setup complete. Scheduled snapshots are disabled. Blah blah. Restoring snapshots will only replace the system files and settings. Non-hidden files and directories in the user's home directories will not be touched. Which is kind of what we just went over. But yeah, with all that said and done, I'm just going to click on finish. And we're ready to take a snapshot. So the most important thing to note here is the 31.7 gigabytes and located at VDA4. For you, that'll most likely be SDA4. But yeah, this is our main concern right here, is we just want to make sure it's pointed in the right direction. And it looks like it is. And we'll also have to do the same thing, of course, when we go to restore the system. We'll have to make sure everything's pointed to our correct partitions there too. But yeah, for now I'm just going to click on restore. Oh, no snapshots have been selected. Sorry, wrong button. Hit create. Guess we have to make a snapshot before we can restore it. That makes sense. But this being the first snapshot, it is definitely going to take some time. I'd say at least 10 minutes or so, just because it is copying absolutely everything it needs to. And then the ones following this one will just build off your previous snapshot. So it won't take nearly as long. And this one too will also take about at least 10 or 11 gigabytes. Whereas the ones after that will take just a tiny fraction of it. So if you can see our partition down here, VDA4 is going to take a good hit after the snapshot's done. And then after that, whatever snapshots you add Afterwards, we'll just take little bits of that. So it won't be anything compared to the first one. But yeah, you can see this is going to take some time. So yeah, I'm going to pause the video now. And I'll catch back up with you in a couple minutes. As you can see, we're just about done here. And this number should go down as soon as that's done. Yep, now we're at 20.9. So yeah, we did lose about 10, 11 gigs there. And I think I'm just going to give this a comment, call it fresh install. Like that. And yep, definitely happy to see that go down. Still using VDA4, so all looks good. We can double check that in the terminal too as well, just to make sure. But I think for now, we're all done with this snapshot. And maybe I'll just open up the terminal quick. It's taking a bit to load, just because there's stuff still going on with the snapshot. And then I'll just run lsplk and make sure we're on VDA4 here for recovery. So I'll start disk-free-h and VDA4. Yeah, we used 11 gigabytes and 36% of the recovery. So yeah, I definitely suggest bumping up your recovery too, to give it at least 50 gigabytes. So after you do that, and you're trying to figure out, say, like what your root is, and say you're on 1 terabyte, you would just subtract the 50 from the recovery. VDA4. Yeah, say you're giving it 50, you just subtract 50 from that. Say 24 for the swap, and then 1 for the boot, which would leave you 525 gigabytes for your root. And that's how I calculate that. But yeah, it looks like our snapshot's good, so I think we can maybe just go into the application manager, find some stuff to delete, and then just do a system restore and make sure everything's back to normal. And in case I didn't already mention this before, I'm pretty sure I did. But of course, one of the first commands you want to run is sudo apt update and sudo apt dist install. And what that'll do is it'll update every single package that you presently have. And I believe it also runs a auto remove at the end too, so then it'll delete the old packages that you're not using anymore, just all in one command. But I typically normally just run this command for my very first update or upgrade, and then everything after that will just be sudo apt upgrade. And that's not install. Sorry, I can't believe I just saw that. That's upgrade. Yeah, like that. So yeah, for the first time you want to run dist upgrade, and then every other upgrade after that just run upgrade without the dist. So, but yeah, like I said, I'm not going to do that right now because I'm on a virtual machine, and I don't particularly want to upgrade almost 300 packages. But if I was definitely going to use this system, that would certainly be something I would go ahead doing. But yep, for me now, I'm just going to get rid of that. And then maybe we can look for some applications here to get rid of. And we got quite a few games. Actually, let's get rid of a whole bunch of stuff. On that USB I had plugged in there, I had just a small line of code that will get rid of all these games in one shot. So maybe we can do that and then restore the system. And then all of these games should be back. But probably just a little bit better than just doing one at a time. And yeah, I think I will I'll do that. So let me shrink that, pull up files. And there's my USB. And I think I have it in the README maybe. Scroll on the bottom here maybe. Sudo update. Yeah, there it is right there. Sudo apt purge. And this will get rid of all the games in one shot. So we'll copy that. Go back to terminal, paste that in there. And then we get rid of that. And get rid of that. Maybe make this full screen. And I'll hit enter to run it. And throw in password. And yep. So this should get rid of all those games in one shot. Now to restore, we should have a better picture of what we're looking at. And it also purged all of them too. So it should have gotten rid of all their config files as well. So I'm just going to clear this. And then we can open up this guy here. And all those games should be gone. And they are. This is all we got for applications right here. So yeah, maybe I'll get rid of that. And exit out of this. And then we can open up Timeshift. And then restore the snapshot. And hopefully after you do that, all those games will be back again. So this time I'm actually going to hit restore and it should work. Excuse me. Then we can just make sure everything's pointed to the right partition. So VDA2 was our root. And that looks good. That's about what we gave. It was 4950 gigs. But main thing I want to see here is the / indicates root. And it's pointing at root. VDA2. And then boot. Keep on root device. That'll be just fine. Because we have another one here, boot EFI is VDA1. We gave it just under a gig, so that looks good. Our home position or home directory is within root, and it says keep on root device, so that's what we want. And our recovery partition was on VDA4, and it's pointing at recovery, and that's about what we gave it. So that's right too. So yeah, everything's pointing in the right direction. So we should be good to recover the system. And to do that, I'm just going to click on next. I'll let it do its dry run. And it should populate quite a list of stuff because we got rid of in between 20 and 30 games there. So it's definitely going to be restoring quite a bit. But definitely a good test. Yeah, so here we got 4 in a row. Gnome Chess, Mines, Nibbles, Robots, Sudoku. And the list goes on and on and on. It's amazing how many files these games generate when they look just so small. But yeah, these are definitely all the games. And a lot of them are shared files, and yeah, that's a lot. But yeah, other than that, it looks good. So I'm just going to click on next and double check here to see everything's pointed to the right spot. So VDA2 was root, VDA1 is boot, and VDA4 is recovery. So everything looks good. And I'm just going to look at the disclaimer quick. But we know everything we do is up to us, so Either way, I think we're pointing in the right direction here. So I'm going to click on next. And Timeshift will do its thing and then reboot the machine. And this may take about 5 minutes or so, but it's usually pretty quick. The only thing I kind of worry about these is what I usually do on a fresh install is I'll just go into the power settings and I'll just make sure nothing's turned off by default after a few minutes. It's really annoying when you're halfway through something like this and it takes, let's say, a little bit longer than 5 minutes and it tries to go to sleep on you or something, which kind of messes everything up. But I find when I forget to do that, I'll just every once in a while, I'll grab the mouse and just go like this. Make sure the system doesn't fall asleep. And then everything should be okay. You can see here too, we have UEFI firmware settings. Now in our boot screen. All that looks normal, especially after restoring a timeshift snapshot. First boot may take a little bit of time, but actually that was quicker than I thought. We were the login screen again, so I'm just going to click on that. Make sure I'm running X11 and throw my password. Yeah, here we go. But I did forget to make that file executable, that X profile, so I think that's why we're not seeing the correct screen resolution here. But just out of curiosity, I'm just going to open up settings and see if it added it. Devices, resolution. Yep, there it is right there. So even though it didn't select it, at least it added it to the list. And then you should need to do this again. Apply. Yep, that's better. So I guess what we want to do now is just open up Timeshift. Or actually maybe just our system applications here. And we'll just make sure all those games are back. Click on all. And sure looks that way. 5 or more, 4 in a row. Nibbles. Yeah, all our games are back. Robots. So yeah, I think this system was restored just fine. But yeah, in case you were looking for a guide on how to install Debian with manual partitioning and set up Timeshift, I think that's the way I do it. And then maybe I'll just open up Terminal here quick. And we'll have a peek at that partition and may see how much room it used here. Just after we've done the restore. So let's go LSBLK. VD4. VDA4 is what we're after here. So I'll just run disk free-h. VDA4, yeah, 11 gigabytes I used on recovery. So, yeah, maybe what I'd just suggest now is after you've gone through and assuming that you've run sudo apt update and sudo apt dist upgrade, get everything installed there, reboot your system, and then take another snapshot with Timeshift. And maybe they just, then just completely finish configuring your system. Yeah, then take that snapshot. So then notice how the 2 snapshots, one with the fresh install and the one after you've configured everything. And that should do you quite a while. And yeah, I'm just trying to think of anything to tell you that I may have left out. But yeah, I think that's it. And maybe I'll just get rid of this. Yeah, not much else I can think of really to show you. That's pretty much it. And I hope this helps. But yeah, this is how to install Debian with manual partitioning and setting up Timeshift. So let's get rid of this virtual machine here quick. And but yeah, thank you guys again for watching the video and checking out the channel. I hope this helps someone out there if you have any partitioning questions or how to install Timeshift properly on its own partition. This is the way I've been setting up my systems now for probably the last 3 or 4 years, and it's just always worked great on any system I install, either whether it's UEFI or a master boot record. Because we're only installing the 4 partitions, it works on both. And again, if you want to install more partitions using UEFI, you can make them all logical if you like, because UEFI will let you do that. Whereas master boot record, of course, you can only have 4 partitions in total if they're all primary. And sorry, actually, what I meant to say was if you're using UEFI, yeah, you can just make them all primary, and you don't have to worry about making any of them logical, unless you do plan on adding more partitions after you've installed your operating system, and then you just make the last one logical. But other than that, they can all be primary as far as UEFI is concerned. Even if you're adding more partitions, say for like your home or your var directory, they can all be primary. And yeah, I think that is it. But yeah, thanks again for watching. And please let me know in the comments if you have any questions or any suggestions on possibly a better partition scheme, because I'm always looking to expand on that. And I feel like that's just going to be an ongoing venture, I guess. And yeah, if you have any input, please let me know. And until then, I guess hope to see you on the next video. Bye for now.